In this video, I'm going to tell you about some advanced paint techniques that, frankly, you can ignore. Temperature's getting a good deal cooler, so it's a lot more pleasant here in the studio. And it's been a while since I've been to the hairdresser, and so it's all not quite Fez conditions yet. We currently live in a time where it is really amazing if you want to learn something. It's very easy to just go online. This is the international symbol for going online, and then you look things up on the Googles, on Yahoo, Bing, YouTube, that kind of thing. And you can learn all kinds of things. Obviously, if you are getting interested in tabletop wargaming and painting those tiny little soldiers that you're going to field on the table, or monsters, demons, robots, monkeys, whatever your force is that you're using in your particular game, you want to learn, well, how do I paint them? And you, of course, being a person who only believes ever in excellence, like we all only ever accept excellence, you're like, well, I want to know how to paint them as good as I possibly can. And so you start looking at paint techniques. You start looking at different tutorials and things like that. And you start to learn about a lot of different paint techniques that maybe you shouldn't have to learn, certainly not to start. I get a lot of newer painters who reach out to me and ask me questions about specific paint techniques. And more often than not, I have a tendency to come back to them and say, how long have you been painting? Because I can kind of sometimes gauge that by the way they ask the question or things like that. Or if it's multiple statements or something like that, like in a Twitch kind of conversation, and then it's like, well, how do you do this? The previous things may lead me to believe, and I may be wrong, how long they've been painting. If they've been painting for just a short period of time, and then they ask about this advanced paint technique, generally what I do is I tell them, look, that's not something you should worry about right now. There's this old saying about you should learn to walk before you run, or some junk like that. And it's very important in making your painting journey something that's a little bit easier for you to swallow. You shouldn't swallow paint. That whole thing might have not worked. But the point is, as you are learning as a painter to go from point A to point B, and to then from point B, I guess, to C, or however that all works, you want to be learning techniques as you go along, because techniques are really where painting at the beginning, it's mostly all technique. People who tell me all the time, well, I'm amazed that you can paint those little things. I could never paint anything like that because I don't have any talent. I always tell them, talent doesn't come till a long, long ways down the road. Now, admittedly, if you are innately talented, you will probably get to that point quicker, certainly. And even then, sometimes just being even detail-oriented, which is not particularly a talent, but in some situations, I guess it might be. But just being detail-oriented and looking at these things, following these techniques, you can go from a really kind of not very good paint job to something that's way better, way quicker, because you're paying attention to the techniques, and the internet allows you to find out about these techniques. But it also allows you to find out about a lot of other techniques that are probably something that you should think about further down the road once you get more skill built up down here in the walking area as opposed to the running area. So enough of your jibber jabber in there, Uncle Adam. What are you talking about? Well, I would tell you to skip wet blending. Don't bother. Now, again, if you've been painting for multiple years, or even really super hardcore nonstop for even half a year, this whole pandemic has really lit your fire, right? And now you started painting, and you paint 7 hours a day, and you're just cracking along. Well, then look at wet blending. But you've been trying to get this kill team of literally 6 dudes painted for a year and a half. Now is not the time to start watching a bunch of videos about wet blending, because that's not what you need to focus on. Wet blending is an amazing thing. Our friend Sam Lenz, pro painter, has been here on the show a couple of different times and talked about wet blending. And it is a technique that is very powerful. And there are tons and tons of different ways to do it. There's spit blending, there's 2-brush blending, there's wet on wet blending. I looked some stuff up before I came up here to the studio. I don't know how to do pretty much any of those. I've got a general idea of how wet blending works, and just top level, you get some paint, And then you either grab a separate brush or you quick clean off this brush and you grab some other paint. And while this paint is still wet, you put some other paint here and then you sort of try to wiggle them together in the middle so that they blend. It sounds easy. It's not. But once you get the hang of it, like many things in life, it becomes easier. But it comes that way through practice. So I'm not going to tell you don't practice it. I'm actually going to tell you that there's some great places to practice it, like on bases. When you're working on bases, put down a bunch of paint, get it real wet down there, not necessarily with water, but just with a lot of kind of slightly thicker paint, and then throw down another color that's maybe close to it. Maybe you start with a dark color towards the back of the base and a little bit of a light color towards the front, whatever, and then just mess with it. Or if you've got like a big shield or a banner or something like that, that's all one color, and you're going to try to put something on it later on, or maybe you're just going to splatter it with mud and dirt, that's fine, but you're going to try to get it to fade a little bit, and you're going to try to do it with your brush. That's the place to do it. When you see people like on Twitch or in YouTube channels and they are wet blending the finger from here to here, that's not necessarily something that you need to do if you're just getting into the hobby or even if you've been in it for a while. Don't concern yourself about these kind of techniques. Instead, think about other techniques that can help you get there faster. And I'm going to probably next week actually try to give you some of those techniques. But right now I'm trying to tell you, don't pay attention to these, and then maybe next week we'll talk about the ones you should pay attention to because they're good starter techniques that get things done quicker. What's another technique that we should probably ignore? I generally still ignore to this day. Now, I'm not a display painter in any way, shape, or form. If you are getting into display painting, you probably want to pay attention to these techniques, but it takes a good long time to kind of get there, and it takes a lot of work. And frequently it does take some talent, just talent you already had. But for getting stuff done on tabletop, things that I'm going to game with, you don't have to worry about these things as much. One thing that we also don't have to worry about as much, edge highlighting. Everyone talks about edge highlighting, and when it's done really, really, really well, it is nice. It is tasty. It's rarely ever done well. Very frequently, it looks kind of like, so if I've done it, there have been a couple of times I can think of in the last year where I've done it and been kind of okay with it. But generally, it has a tendency to get kind of thicker and thinner and thicker and thinner as you run it along that line, and it gets too thick and it looks like crayon, and there's lots of problems. Sometimes you use a color that's way too bright. I get people to ask me all the time about, well, how do I paint black and then highlight it? And I see people online all the time who are going to paint black Templars or something like that, and they highlight with like a light gray, and then it looks like Tron. You know what I mean? Because everything is black, but there's all these white lines all over the place, or nearly white lines, because they seem that way against the black. I'll tell you, don't bother with that. And here's a quick pro tip. Look into dry brushing. Dry brushing is faster and quicker and doesn't always necessarily obviously look perfect, but it can look pretty darn good. I did a video, pachow, about using a makeup brush for this, and I do it all the time, like on these Death Watch. And these guys are black models, black painted armor, that work really well with this technique, and it was stupid fast. So when you are first starting out, you're wanting to learn these techniques so that you can get things done stupid fast and get more things done so you can keep moving forward. So don't focus too much on high-end techniques that you hear about and you see videos about. YouTube will show you a video for another painting video when you look at this painting video, or you look at that painting video, and then they show you another one. And YouTube doesn't know where your skill level is. So it's very difficult for you to be able to like kind of filter out and say, I don't need to learn about two-brush wet blending right now because I'm still trying to figure out how to properly prime my models without making them all fuzzy, or filling in the detail and stuff like that. So like I said, next week, I'm going to make a video that teaches you about some of the kind of beginner things to master so that you can get things done quicker and on the table. And until then, don't watch any videos. I mean, you can watch them if you want to, but don't worry about and get yourself concerned about learning wet blending and edge highlighting. Again, unless you're a pro or trying to be a pro, then look at it. But if you're just trying to get little dudes and little dudettes and little monsters and robots and monkeys on the table, then you don't worry about those as much. Oh, hey, yeah, and I was going to ask, this new game came out, a video game, if you might have heard of those things before, and it's called Necromunda Underhive Wars. This is not sponsored or anything like that. I bought it, like anybody else. But I'm wondering if you want to watch it on Twitch when I play it, maybe. If you don't follow me on Twitch, you ought to. I'm going to keep doing my normal hobby stuff that I do on Monday nights And Friday mornings, you can go to the Twitch channel and find out when that it, anyway, in your neck of the woods, what time it is. But I'm thinking about sometimes in the evenings in my neck of the woods, just playing some video games. And I thought maybe people might want to watch me play Necromunda. I have downloaded it and installed it, but I have literally not even started it yet. So let me know in the comments below what you think. I might try to play it a little bit so I get the hang of it, or let me know in the comments if you're like, no, we want to watch you literally from the first, like from the get, you've just started it, we want to see it all. Let me know. Like I said, I haven't played it yet. In my relatively meager video gaming time, I've been playing the new Tony Hawk because it really brings back memories of 1999 to me. How old were you in 1999? I was not young.